Shedeur Sanders being cited for a speeding ticket, not that big of a deal. I know people are going to try to make it one, though. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer Sherman, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. And Shedeur Sanders was cited for going 101 in a 60-mile-per-hour zone, given a ticket. It's really not that serious, but I know people are going to make a big deal out of it. Speaking of Shedeur Sanders, he's part of this quarterback competition that will take center stage at training camp later next month. And I'm going to tell you the truth about the situation when it comes to the quarterback competition. And also, speaking of training camp, we know the report dates for rookies and veterans. I actually think the way camp's being run this year is going to leave people feeling more optimistic about the Browns when it all concludes coming on down the pike. We'll talk about all that and more. I do want to thank you for being an everydayer with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed, with bonus content on some weekends as well. It's totally free to you. Just hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. And, of course, at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, you can also get involved in the show, sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comments section. This is your team. So be part of that conversation every single day. And in the grand scheme of things, is speeding by going 101 in a 60-mile-per-hour zone a stupid thing to do? Sure. I think we all would concede that if that was us, it would be a stupid thing to do, and we'd all probably accept that. But in the grand scheme of things, Shedeur Sanders getting a speeding ticket is basically like a non-issue. It's nothing that we need to make into a bigger thing. And I know people are going to do that. People will find ways to use this mistake, this one situation, as reason why Shedeur Sanders isn't ready for the NFL or isn't ready to be a starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. The fact of the matter is, like, guys make mistakes, and speeding is like one of the least egregious of that you can make. I've gotten speeding tickets before. I'm sure you listening have gotten a speeding ticket. And if you haven't, I tip my cap to you, sir, for not being ever caught speeding or speeding at all, or whatever you want to call it. It's something that's pretty common. Now, is it common to go 101 in a 60-mile-per-hour zone? Probably not. But at the same time, like, it's a young kid making a mistake here, and it doesn't have to be anything more than that. It doesn't have to be anything more than a learning experience for him as he realizes, like, the spotlight that he has on him as an NFL player, and that he is going to be held to sort of this higher standard, which I think he already understands. I mean, again, we've talked so much about Shedeur and how polarizing of a player that he is, and the fact that he, has grown up in the spotlight because of his dad, and he understands the magnitude that comes with that. I think he just simply made a mistake here, and it doesn't have to be anything more than that. But I know there are going to be people who try to equate this to him as a player, him and his play on the field, and the things that come with that, and that he's not, like I said, not ready for that, or that he isn't going to be a good decision maker because of these things. It's a silly, silly thing to do. That cannot be part of the equation here when it comes to Shedeur Sanders making a mistake here. It's whatever. This doesn't have to be an indictment on his character or on him. It wasn't a smart thing to do, but it doesn't impact in any way, shape, or form his ability or should it impact his ability to compete for the starting quarterback job when training camp opens up in late July. It just doesn't. And frankly, we've seen the Browns before with these types of incidents. I mean, here's the thing, like, Myles Garrett, a couple of years back, was speeding and completely destroyed his car. The Browns' biggest star, their star player, Myles Garrett, destroyed his car speeding, and we moved on. Like, life goes on. Now, in that instance, like, Myles Garrett was a figurehead of this organization, and so he was held to an even higher standard because people considered him a leader of the team who, had been here for so many years and was this great, star player that they sort of assumed, well, hey, you got to be smarter than that. You can't make those mistakes. But I do think Myles has learned from that. And I do think, he hasn't been caught in any situations like that since. And that's the biggest thing moving forward is, like, How does Shedeur take this situation and grow from it? It doesn't have to be anything more than a mistake made. You learn from it, you move on, and you keep on fighting. But like I said, I know that there are going to be people who try to use this against him because of the polarizing figure that he is. We've seen the conversations, we've seen the debates, we've seen the topics. There are people who think that he deserved to be a 5th-round pick and he's no good. And so this would be just the latest thing that some throw against him as a reason why they don't want him to be the Cleveland Browns starting quarterback. I'm not going there. I've loved Shedeur since the beginning. I've thought since the draft that I could see him being a starting quarterback for this team, especially in Kevin Stefanski's offense. I thought he had a really good spring. I thought he did really nice things with as he excel or jumped up group to group. He was with the 3s and the 4s primarily in OTAs. He moved out to do some stuff with the 2s in mandatory minicamp, and I thought he looked good every single time. He was either sort of promoted to a different group or he was out there. He was the most consistent of the quarterbacks, I thought, during minicamp and in spring in general. And so it sucks in the grand scheme of things that it ends this way, like that his spring, all the progress he made this spring gets now sort of tarnished by this one mistake, this one incident that people are going to sort of throw in his face. But it doesn't really have to be that. And I hope that people can be reasonable enough to understand that a speeding ticket is not the end of the world. I mean, just last year, you had Mike Hall get caught up in a situation of a domestic dispute at home that led him to go to court for it. And ultimately, he was on the commissioner's exempt list and missed a handful of games because of it. Like, this isn't even going to extend to that level. It's a speeding ticket. It's somebody doing something silly. You learn from it and you move on. Is it a serious thing? Yeah, because like going 101 in a 60-mile-per-hour zone, like, yeah, you could get in an accident. It could have been a lot worse. He could have been injured. He could have injured somebody else. And then we'd be talking about a much different situation. But in the grand scheme of things, like, you live and you learn. You move forward from this, and it's water under the bridge. Don't make it bigger than it has to be. That's the way I view it. It changes nothing in my opinion, and I'm sure it won't change anything in the Browns' opinions, because every time they have a player who gets caught up in something that's, an off the field situation, something that's, unbecoming of them, I guess, or whatever you want to say, they always play very close to the vest. They let the legal process play out. In this situation, the legal process is basically he just pays a $250 fine, or he goes to court and fights it and sees what happens from there, and then he probably still ends up paying a fine. Like, that's the gist of it. It's going to be over and done with in pretty short order here, and it doesn't have to be something that like looms large over him or that people use against him. Like, anybody trying to make those claims and use this as like a knock on his character, I think it's utterly ridiculous, because just about everybody's gotten a speeding ticket in their life, except maybe my wife, who I think has avoided that in a couple instances. But other than that, it's not that, people have had this happen to them before. It's really not that serious of a thing. Let's not make it more than it is. And we'll move forward and let Shedeur compete when July 18th rolls around and rookies are reporting for training camp, which we will get to coming up. But first, speaking of the quarterback competition, I got the truth about it coming up next here on the Locked On Browns podcast. Ever check your bank accounts and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start actually building wealth. Plus, managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts and stay on the same page without stress while setting goals for your financial futures. I can tell you, this summer, we've had some stress leading into it, trying to figure out what trips we're taking and how much money we can spend and where we want to go and where we want to stay and all these different things that come with travel. We've nailed all that down. We figured it all out, and Monarch Money was there to help us balance our books and figure out just how much money we had to spend on family vacations this year. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. All right, so we talked about Shedeur Sanders, and that's a nice segue into the quarterback competition in general, which we know is going to heat up once training camp opens up at the end of July, of course. Now, with that said, I think there's been different conversations about who's the lead horse in this group, right? And I think largely those center around the team loves Kenny Pickett, but Joe Flacco is like the elder statesman of the group who's been here before, has seen this offense, knows what comes with it, and is the most experienced of the group. And because of that, he didn't take a lot of snaps during minicamp. He was limited really to just the third day where he was with the ones. He didn't really do a lot other than that, and he kind of got like a bye, if you will, during minicamp week because they know what they're gonna see from Joe Flacco. And frankly, I think that makes him the strongest candidate to be the starter. And that's what I think this conversation needs to center around when it comes to the truth about that position and how the Browns need to go about picking it. Because I get it. Like, they might love Pickett. The organization traded for him. They might feel like he's their Sam Darnold and a chance to sort of revive his career here and give him a chance to find footing as a starter in this league and whatnot. And that's fine. I can respect the fact that they have that vantage point and that's how they feel. But they cannot possibly pick him to be the starting quarterback at the end of August if he looks bad during training camp, if things look if the operation isn't there, if the throws aren't there, if the offense isn't moving the ball, which is what we saw a lot of last year with Deshaun Watson at training camp. Like, anybody who was surprised at how bad the offense was last year should have been paying attention to how training camp was covered and what was said about it, because it was a lot of the same issues that you saw play out in games. Pre-snap penalties, can't, really get the plays off because there's execution problems. There was a lot of false starts. There was a lot of illegal formations, illegal shifts, like just things that were not working. And that came to fruition on the field as well, where the offense was terrible. They couldn't move the sticks. They weren't really able to connect on a lot of things. And so because of that, it played out on the field. And the same thing is going to be the case this year. Like, they could have sold it last year to the team that okay, yeah, Deshaun, maybe the offense has struggled with him during training camp, but he's our starter. And the team sort of knew that going in, that he was going to be the starting quarterback. And then Kevin Stefanski told you several weeks into the season, he gives us the best chance to win. Now, whether or not you believe that or not, whether or not the team believed that or not, that remains to be, I guess, investigated for another time. But in the grand scheme of things, like, what we saw during training camp with the offense is what we got. And all I'm trying to say is, like, the Browns can't possibly do that again. The Browns can't possibly have a quarterback that doesn't look very good during training camp and then try to sell the team on, hey, this is our guy. This is the guy that we're going to start. And I talked about this on yesterday's episode. I think Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry are going to get some latitude in terms of trying to fix this team. Like, I think they are in line right now to get to 2026, see next season through, see next offseason through, where they're trying to build this roster. If they don't think they have a quarterback on this team this year, they're going to get a chance to pick that quarterback next year with this class that's coming out that's supposed to be one of the best in a while. So they're going to have some leeway and some time to sort of see those things through, from my estimation, as things stand right now. But the locker room dynamics are also a very, very fragile thing. And one thing here or there can change that completely. Think back to the whole fallout with Baker Mayfield started because the Odell Beckham Jr. situation, where he basically forced his way out. Things weren't great between him and Baker. His dad's out here, tweeting videos of him being wide open and Baker not throwing in the ball. And because of that, it ended up with the team deciding we got to move on from Baker. Like, this is the decision that we have to make. And so here they were moving on from Baker and going and finding Deshaun Watson. And it was because the locker room became very divided on Baker's side versus Odell Beckham Jr. side, with a lot of players taking Odell Beckham Jr. side. These are things that have been well reported and well vetted. So we know that about that situation. One situation, one incident, one thing changed the dynamics of that locker room, and they felt to get control back, they had to make a change. And the same thing could apply here. Like, as much as I think Stefanski still has the ear of his guys on that team and on that roster, if you start a quarterback that they watch during training camp struggle and doesn't look very good, they're going to have to, how can they possibly sell that to the team without Kevin Stefanski potentially risking losing that group of people? and losing his guys in that locker room who he's hoping go to battle every single week for him out on the football field. Like, it's a very dicey, fragile situation that he can't just bank on. He can just pick whatever starter and sell that to everybody. Like, these guys aren't idiots. These players aren't stupid. They know that at the end of our August, which quarterback has looked the best is going to be the quarterback that ultimately has to play, frankly. Like, if they pick somebody else, the guys are gonna know. Like, they are going to understand that he wasn't the best option. So if Joe Flacco looks the best, you got to go with Joe Flacco, because frankly, Stefanski and this staff, they owe it to that locker room to pick the best guy. There are people on this roster, on this team, who are, trying to win, and they're putting their bodies on the line every single week in the name of winning for this organization. One of the ones that stands out in my mind the most is Joe Bitonio, right? He could have retired. Joe Bitonio could have retired. He came back. He postponed his retirement for another season because he wanted to come back and see this thing through. He thinks he can still play at a high level, and he believes that this team has a chance to maybe be better than some are giving it credit for, right? So, especially going back, as I talked about, to Stefanski's normal offense and having that in your back pocket and understanding, like, okay, you have this. It's back to the basics. It's what this offensive line and this team did well previously. So there's reason for excitement there for somebody like Joe Bitonio. He wants to have a puncher's chance. He wants to have a fighting chance to be a playoff team and compete in that realm, right? You're not going to sell. I don't know how you sell that to this locker room and to this team if Kenny Pickett struggles mightily throughout training camp, and then you just decide he's our starter anyway because we like him the best. That might be true. But listen, you might also risk losing the locker room, and that's where things can get dicey for Kevin Stefanski, because as soon as he loses the locker room, that's where you start talking about like his job security being very much in question. So it's just an interesting setup. I think that you're going to have to leave training camp by picking the best guy. And I've only really talked about Flacco and Pickett because I'm anticipating Flacco is going to look the best, just because, again, he knows the offense. He got that bye week, if you will, during mandatory minicamp, because they know what they're getting from Flacco. And that's not necessarily the case with Kenny Pickett, who's still sort of learning some things. But if Kenny looks like he looked in the spring, which I thought was just okay, and I thought he maybe looked the worst of all the quarterbacks in terms of like consistency, from a consistency standpoint. Granted, we know Shedeur didn't take any reps with the ones, and Dylan Gabriel took some reps with the ones and didn't look great. But I thought like Pickett, for being a candidate to be the number one guy, he just looked fine. Like, he didn't look great. And I thought Flacco, conversely, when he was out there, looked like Flacco, what you would come to expect. And so if that's how this thing plays out, if Flacco ends up being the quarterback that looks the best, I don't know how you don't start him with the understanding that, like, you have to sell that locker room on trying to win. I know that some people want to see this team just tank and maybe try to draft another quarterback next year, get as high of a draft pick or draft picks, when you consider they have the Jaguars draft pick as well, as possible. But tanking is not a terminology that that teams are going to use. Now, you can maybe do some things to suggest that you're tanking, or tank without like really saying it. And I think that ultimately starting Kenny Pickett is going to be that. And because I just don't have a lot of faith that he's going to be the clear-cut starter by the time training camp ends. And so maybe that's their plan is, hey, we're going to start Kenny Pickett because we're going to try to win, but we're not going to like really, really try to win. But they're not going to say tank. But again, I just think like this is too delicate of a situation coming off a 3-14 season for anybody to even lean into the idea of like, hey, we might want to lose this year. They have to try their damnedest to sell and show that they're trying to win. I think ultimately that Flacco will be the guy that does that. And so you can't go into training camp and then leave training camp by naming a starter who didn't look good during that time of year, because it's the same story, different year if that's the case, because last year the starting quarterback didn't look very good, and we saw what happened on the field. You're not going to fool these guys again. So again, as much as they might love Kenny Pickett, I don't know that he's just the starter just because they love him. I think it's going to take him playing really, really well during training camp in the preseason. And that might happen. It might happen. He's been a preseason darling before, for them to actually name him the starter and convince everybody that he actually gives them the best chance to win this fall. Things are going to look different at training camp as we talk about training camp. I got a feeling people are going to be hyping up the Browns because of it, regardless of the quarterback situation. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. So we know the quarterback situation is going to take center stage at training camp this year, but I also hope that when we don't know yet the dates that training camp are going to run to, which ones are going to be open to the public, all those things are yet to be revealed. And once they are revealed, we'll obviously talk about them here on the show. What we did learn, though, this week, as the NFL released all the start dates or report dates for every single team, is that the Browns rookies will report on July 18th. The veterans report a couple days later on July 22nd. Once they report, they're not allowed to have on-field work the first day of training camp, so there won't be any on-the-field stuff until a couple of days later. That's about the same time as it usually starts. Last year, training camp opened up on the 24th, I believe it was, out at the Greenbrier. We know the team's not doing the Greenbrier this year. So a lot of these practices are going to take place just at their practice facility. We know that they do have joint practices, 2 different sessions of joint practices. Those will be before the Carolina game on the 9th. They'll have one on the 7th, that Thursday before. Day off in between. Then they play the Panthers on the road. And then they have 2 joint practices with the Philadelphia Eagles on the 13th, that Wednesday, and the 14th, leading up to their preseason game with the Eagles on the 16th. And so those will be some highly competitive sessions. If anyone is actually planning on going down to Philly for those, you're going to see some really physical work. From everything that Kevin Stefanski talks about at those sessions each year, they love joint practices, love them. They really want to. They feel those are the sessions that they get their best work in, even more so than the preseason games. Kevin Stefanski's talked about how he'd rather do joint practices than preseason games anyway. So those are going to be highly competitive and a chance to really see what this team can look like and do, especially with the Eagles, who are obviously the defending Super Bowl champions, and the fact that you have a team there that is super deep and is going to push you to the max when it comes to trying to, figure out what your team has and what you look like as a team. So those things are all going to sort of sort themselves out. But I also just think once we do get the dates, like any of the public sessions you can come to, you should, because training camp is going to look a lot different this year. And I think we saw some of the early stages of that during the spring. It was only helmets. So it wasn't like you were seeing, the full effect of the physicality of what these sessions are going to look like and the drills that they're doing. But you could tell there was a different intensity about this, and that guys are really competing in all these different, whether it's 11 on 11s between the 2 fields where you had the 2 rookies on one field and the 2 veterans on the other, whether it was some of the individual work where guys were really pushing themselves. You can see there's a different intensity on top of the fact that this offseason, the Browns did change some things with their training staff. In the past, the way that training camp has kind of been treated has been, we got to keep guys healthy and get them ready for the season so we can start the season fresh and ready to go. I think they noticed or took notes on the fact that they've tried that the last couple of years. They tried that this year. It doesn't make a difference. Guys still get hurt. And frankly, they underperformed last year because of some of those things, because they weren't maybe they didn't have the attention and detail and the intensity they needed this time of year to get ready for the start of the season. Then they started slow and it spiraled and all these different things. It was all just bad. They needed, and it goes back to what I talked about last segment with the quarterback competition, or not the quarterback competition last year, but the way that the offense looked with Deshaun last year, that was also happening in training camp. And so it just seemed like they weren't prepared, seemed like they were behind the 8 ball, and then that just perpetuated itself as the season started and continued, and it became a big issue. The pre-snap penalties and all those things, the discipline just wasn't there. And those are tendencies, those are trends that you establish during training camp before the season starts. And if you can hit the ground running when training camp does start, that's massive. That puts you ahead of the 8 ball a little bit, because we talk so much about early season games are weird. Teams are still finding their identities. If you can sort of be ahead of the curve and knowing who you are and what you do best, then that sets you up to hit the ground running rather than sort of be lagging behind to start the season. So I do think you're going to see a different intensity. I think you're going to notice that training camp is going to be run differently this year. And it's not like a fluke. It's by design. It's something Kevin Stefanski has prioritized already this offseason in the build up to the regular season, and changed the way that he does things a little bit, because he realized They can't keep doing things the same way they have because last year was a total disaster when they did. And so it's going to look different. And I honestly think for those that are able to attend, if you come out watch this team in live and in person during training camp, I think the way that they're running it, the drills you're going to see, how the intensity's picked up a notch. I think those are going to be reasons why if the Browns have like a good preseason in training camp and certain players are standing out and there's at least a quarterback that emerges that looks really good, and the run game looks as dominant as I think it's going to look, I think people are going to leave that phase of the NFL calendar year, training camp and the preseason, and get ready for week one. And there's actually be more excitement and maybe higher expectations for this team than what there would have been originally or what Vegas is giving the Browns credit for. Like, I think people will be excited about this team if they look good during training camp, during the preseason. And I know it's just training camp in the preseason. I myself really try to stay grounded as I'm watching those sessions and things because I know it's just the preseason and training camp. It's not the end all be all for what this team is going to be. We can only use so much of that time of year to really get us a picture of what this team's going to look like, especially because they're not giving everything away. They're not running all their plays. They're saving certain things. They're just trying to get different looks against different people. So I get it. Like there's some context. It's not the full context. And so you can't let that be the end all be all. But if they have a strong training camp in preseason and the offense is looking good and there's a quarterback, like I said, that stands out and the defense looks locked in and like they're ready to go for the start of the season and the intensity is seen by others, those who are in attendance, like fans in practices, and it's being reported that the intensity is there and guys are really taking to that and they're healthy to start the year because that is another key component here. I think you leave training camp with seeing how they're going to run it this year and how it's going to look different. And I think there will be optimism that maybe this team will surprise some people. And listen, I know Browns fans there is a contingent of Browns fans who are the eternal pessimists who are like, yeah, this team's always just going to stink. Then there's the contingent of Browns fans that are the eternal optimists that every year when the season rolls around, they'll talk themselves into the Browns being good and having a chance and being better than people expect. I think that's going to be easier to do this year than some might think, because I think you're going to see just the intensity and a different sort of team in terms of the way that they're running things at training camp. And it's going to open that door for people to be really excited about what's kind of coming down the pike here and the season that's ahead. We'll see. That's just my sort of projection and thought on it. But I do feel that people will know it'll be noticeable how they're handling things this year. And it will get people excited for a season that obviously right now there's maybe not a lot of excitement about for some because, well, the Vegas totals are what the Vegas totals are, and people are projecting this team to win less than 5 games. But who knows? We'll see. Another episode Down with the Dog Pound. Thanks for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. There's plenty more to come, including tomorrow. We'll do a Fan Friday. We'll get some of your questions in here as well and talk some more about the quarterback situation as we always do. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting, or you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. See ya.